guess we're ready? Okay, very good. Good morning. The committee will come to order. We're here today to talk about H.R. 3294, the Hubzone Unification and Business Stability Act of 2017. This bipartisan bill implements important reforms for the Small Business Administration's historically underutilized Business Zones program, more commonly known as the Hubzone Program. The program's core mission is to bring economic hope, independence, jobs, and businesses to depressed areas marked by high unemployment and poverty. This is accomplished through the use of federal contracting preferences. H.R. 3294 helps the program achieve its mission objectives by providing legislative solutions to the challenges and weaknesses identified by small businesses and government watchdogs. Measures proposed in this bill would create more opportunities for our rural communities by potentially expanding the number of rural areas qualified for Hubzone area designation. Certified firms operating within economically distressed rural and urban communities would benefit from the consistency this bill would bring to the ever-changing Hubzone area designations. These measures would encourage small businesses currently deterred by these issues to now seek their Hubzone certification, which would promote greater competition within the federal contracting landscape. The bill would also create an extra layer of protection for areas devastated by natural disasters or catastrophic events by potentially prolonging the area's Hubzone designation. This is intended to promote revitalization and economic growth within those unique areas. This change is particularly relevant in light of what our neighbors in Texas and Louisiana and Florida have faced following Hurricanes Harvey and Irma. Yes, and in Puerto Rico as well, and in many of the islands in the Caribbean. Additionally, the bill would strengthen performance assessment and fraud prevention measures recommended by the Government Accountability Office, the GAO. This includes mandating the collection of critical performance measures and requiring the SBA to verify recertification information. These are among a few of the provisions in the bill intended to benefit Hubzone small businesses and the communities in which they operate. I've always said that this committee is a rare place where bipartisanship is the norm, and crafting good policy for the betterment of small businesses knows no party lines. This has truly been a bipartisan effort to begin fixing the core issues facing the Hubzone program. And I'd like to especially thank our ranking member, Ms. Velasquez, for leading this important piece of legislation, and I hope that this is a positive first step towards reforming the Hubzone program. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses here this morning. We have a very distinguished panel, all of whom are Hubzone small business owners themselves. We want to thank all of you for being here today, and I'd now like to yield to the ranking member, Ms. Velasquez, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I too echo your comments. We enjoy a very good working relationship. We know our responsibility in this committee is to work on behalf of small businesses, and that is what we do. And in that spirit, we craft bipartisan legislation. And when we do that, we have a better product, and we're all very proud of it. Each year, the federal government procures more than $400 billion in goods and services from businesses around the country through government contracts. The historically underutilized Business Zone Program, or Hubzone Program, was created in 1997 to provide federal assistance to firms located in economically distressed areas. By lowering barriers to entry into the federal marketplace for these firms, the Hubzone Program has fostered competition while helping rebuild communities. Businesses in Hubzones play a large and vital role in our nation's economy because they create jobs for those residing both inside and outside of these economically distressed areas. However, since its implementation, the Hubzone program has not reached its full potential, from ensuring that only certified businesses enter the program to being able to present evidence that the program is meeting its mission. SBA has largely failed in the basic operation of this program. This committee has heard from the GAO on a number of occasions. Each time they report on the program's problems. Most disappointing to me was the poor oversight that allowed GAO investigators to get fake businesses certified even though they did not meet eligibility requirements. In most instances, those certifications could have been verified by SBA simply asking for additional information on the location of the business. While GAO's most recent report shows that there have been improvements in the certification process, these changes are not enough to ensure that businesses are adhering to the program's requirements. This shows a clear need for legislation. That is why I introduced H.R. 3294, the Hubzone Uniformity and Business Stability Act of 2017, or Hobbs Act, along with Chairman Chabot. This bill will help ensure that small firms in underutilized business areas have fair and equal access to the federal marketplace. Many areas will likely lose status this year because of changing data, crippling many rural economies. H.R. 3294 will forestall this change in many affected areas. The Hobbs Act will establish a 5-year cycle for determining the geographic boundaries of Hubzone, creating greater certainty for companies. It will also change the calculations for how certain geographic areas qualify for the program, potentially adding as many as 1,000 rural and non-urban counties. This alone has the potential to help more businesses avail themselves of the Hubzone initiative's benefits. Most importantly, the legislation includes new performance metrics to ensure the data collected by the SBA will allow us to measure the program's success and economic impact. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today about how the proposed legislation can improve the Hubzone program and provide sufficient oversight for initial certification, recertification, and business development to ensure new businesses enter the program. Nearly 90% of the Hubzone areas still do not have a business participating in the program. This low participation rate has resulted in the failure to meet the 3% prime and 3% subcontracting goals. The dollars and actions awarded through this program have continually decreased since FY 2008. Only 82,000 actions worth $6.8 billion, negative 1.67% of prime contracting dollars were awarded to Hubzone firms in fiscal year 2016. It is my hope that this committee can work together to reverse this trend. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the witnesses who are going to be offering your insights on making the program more effective and helping economically challenged areas. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Gentlelady yields back. And if committee members have opening statements, we'd ask they be submitted for the record without objections so ordered. And I'll take this time now to explain our timing limits here and the lighting system, which will assist you in keeping to the time limits. It's pretty simple. You get 5 minutes, and then we'll have 5 minutes, each of us, to ask questions. And there's a lighting system that'll help you a bit. The green light will stay on for 4 minutes. Yellow light will come on to let you know you have a minute to wrap up. And then the red light will come on, and we ask you to try to stick within that if at all possible. We'll let you go over a little bit, but not too much. So try to stay within that if at all possible. I'd now like to introduce our panel here. The first witness will be Shirley Bailey. Ms. Bailey appeared before the subcommittee on contracting and workforce earlier this year, and we welcome you back here today. Ms. Bailey is testifying today in her capacity as a board chair of the Hubzone Contractors National Council. Ms. Bailey has been deeply involved in the Hubzone program for many years, both in her service as a Hubzone Council board member and in her personal experience as a small business owner. Ms. Bailey is the co-owner, executive vice president, and chief operating officer of GCC Technologies, a successful Hubzone certified small business located in Garrett County, Maryland. We're looking forward to hearing your testimony here this morning, and welcome. Our second witness is Robert Scherger. Mr. Sugar is the founder and lead attorney for a successful Hubzone certified law firm based in Columbus, Ohio, with an office in Wilmington, Ohio. Why not Cincinnati too? My goodness. In addition to serving various public sector clients, including local governments, hospitals, and universities, Mr. Sugar's firm also works with the United States Department of Education. His firm was recently awarded a prime contract with the United States Department of Justice, in large part due to his Hubzone certification. We thank you for being here, and we look forward to your testimony as well. And our third witness is Mr. Dennis Dufour. Mr. Dufour joined the data entry company, or TDEC, 20 years ago after a career in the insurance industry, and is the third generation within his family to serve as president of the company. TDEC is a successful Hubzone certified small business providing labor-intensive services to the public and private sectors, such as document management and call center assistance. Under Mr. Dufour's leadership, the company tripled its revenues and expanded its growth in federal sector to include over a dozen federal clients. Some of these clients include the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Labor, Department of Justice, and the Department of Defense, and we also welcome and thank you for your testimony. And I would now like to yield to the ranking member to introduce our fourth witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Carlos Melendez, the COO and co-founder of Woven Wear, an 8A and Hubzone certified small business located in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Since 2003, Woven Wear has been developing custom software solutions for enterprises in the telecommunications, healthcare, and distribution industries. Today, Woven Wear has more than 90 employees in Puerto Rico that are mostly engineers, computer scientists, and data scientists. Woven Wear has been part of Inc.'s 5,000 list of the fastest growing private companies in the U.S. 3 times, and 60% of its revenue comes from customers located outside Puerto Rico. Mr. Melendez has a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and a Juris Doctor, both from the University of Puerto Rico. Mr. Melendez is also the vice chairman of the board of Comprometidos, a nonprofit organization that connects people to foster commitment with the personal, social, and economic development of Puerto Rican communities wherever they are. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. We welcome all the witnesses here, and Ms. Bailey, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Chavit, Ranking Member Velasquez, and members of the committee. My name is Shirley Bailey, President and Board Chair of the Hubzone Contractors National Council. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today. The Council's membership includes Hubzone certified small businesses, other small businesses, prime contractors, and other organizations interested in the Hubzone program. In addition, the Hubzone Council is an advocate as it relates to procurement and entrepreneurial policy and continues to seek needed modernization of the program. To that end, the Council fully supports H.R. 3294, the Hubzone Uniformity and Business Stability Act of 2017. During the Subcommittee on Contracting and Workforce's March 2nd Hubzone hearing titled Learning from History, Ideas to Strengthen and Modernize the Hubzone Program, the Council's testimony revolved around the lack of business certainty, constantly changing area designations, and lack of performance metrics. I am pleased to see that the committee has taken steps to address these issues and others in H.R. 3294. The first important reform in H.R. 3294 that I'd like to discuss is the transition from the annual ACS designation updates to a 5-year cycle beginning in 2020. Frisian designation changes, with the exception of disaster area and BRAC declarations, will provide businesses operating in hub zones the stability and certainty that they need to make the necessary investments in their communities without worrying that they will lose their hub zone designation the following year. The second major reform included in Section 3 of the bill eliminates the qualifier non-metropolitan from state median income when determining area eligibility. Currently, a non-metropolitan county must have a median income below 80% of the state's non-metropolitan median income to qualify for hub zone designation. Of our nation's 1,984 non-metropolitan counties, only 207 currently qualify for hub zone designation under this income formula. However, 89% of all of our non-metropolitan counties in the U.S. have median incomes less than 80% of their state median incomes. We believe that this change will go a long way toward creating jobs in rural America and assist in bridging the income gaps by providing opportunities and economic development in our nation's most distressed areas. I'd like to give you a few state examples of the number of additional non-metropolitan areas qualified as HUBZone areas as a result of the income calculation reform in this bill. There will be 6 counties in Ohio, 13 counties in New York, 39 counties in Missouri, including Montgomery County in Missouri's 3rd Congressional District, 20 counties in Kentucky, including 9 counties in Kentucky's 1st Congressional District, 28 counties in Kansas, including 13 counties in Kansas's 1st Congressional District, 6 counties in Mississippi, including Calhoun, Choctaw, and Oktibbeha, sorry about that, in Mississippi's 1st Congressional District, 21 counties in Florida, including Putnam County in Florida's 7th Congressional District, 5 counties in South Carolina, including Cherokee County in South Carolina's 5th Congressional District, 11 counties in Iowa, including Floyd, Manoa, Webster, and Wright counties in Iowa's 4th Congressional District. Another critical reform pertains to qualified disaster areas. In light of recent hurricanes Harvey and Irma, H.R. 3294 includes a timely provision that empowers the SBA administrator to extend the HUBZone designation of a qualified disaster area that has not fully recovered. As we know from past national disasters, recovery can take months and sometimes even years before communities are made whole again. Our hearts go out to the victims of these historic storms, and it will take all of us to help these areas truly recover. We believe the extended HUBZone designation can play an important role in the recovery efforts. As I stated in March, many areas are going to lose their HUBZone status by the beginning of 2018. Our members need Congress to act this year to avoid a major disruption in the program. As this bill suggests, the Hubzone program cannot succeed with eligibility constantly in flux. Any delay will result in substantial loss of Hubzone firms. Not only is this difficult for small Hubzone companies, it is also a setback for the Hubzone qualified areas that need the business income and job generation this program encourages. As a point of personal privilege, I'd like to acknowledge Vivian Ling of Chair Chavitt's staff and Halima Locke on Ranking Member Velasquez's staff for their hard work and collaboration with the Council in drafting this important reform legislation. Again, I'd like to thank you for allowing the Council to testify at this very important hearing, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you very much.
you.
Our staff loves those shout-outs, so thank you very much. They don't get enough, so we appreciate their hard work. Mr. Sherry, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, Chairman Chabot, Ranking Member Velasquez, and members of the committee. My name is Robert Scherger, and I'm the founder and lead attorney for the law offices of Robert A. Scherger. Founded in 2008, we've been a HUBZone certified law firm since August 2016. I'm also a member of the HUBZone Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify today. Chairman Chabot, it gives me great pride to know that the committee is led by a fellow Buckeye. Thank you. Scherger Law's principal office is based in a HUBZone in urban downtown Columbus, Ohio. We also maintain an office and 11 employees in Wilmington in rural Clinton County, Ohio. Since our founding, Scherger Law has grown to 52 employees. This job increase is directly attributable to our HUBZone status, as it has allowed us to become a federal subcontractor to the Department of Education and a prime contractor to the Department of Justice. The Clinton County office was uniquely qualified to be our satellite office, as DHL had just moved out of the regional airport, leaving thousands without jobs. We have stepped in and taken over a space in the airport with the target to grow the business through our federal procurement to at least 40 jobs. I am pleased the committee has undertaken the task of changing a program badly in need of change. In my view, H.R. 3294, the HUBZone Uniformity and Business Stability Act of 2017, provides much-needed stability to companies like mine. Clinton County, home of Wilmington, will lose its HUBZone designation in 2018. I certainly favor the approach in H.R. 3294, which freezes the current HUBZone eligibility maps until 2020. It would provide us with the transition time our firm needs while we decide how to keep our valued employees and find a new office. Transitioning from the annual ACS to a 5-year process will enable our firm to find that location and make the capital investments necessary to continue bringing economic development to the hardworking people of Ohio. The HUBZone online tool that requires the SBA to clearly and conspicuously provide access to the data used by the administrator to determine whether or not an area is a qualified area in the year in which the online tool is prepared is also a significant requirement. It will assist HUBZone firms that maintain offices in multiple locations like Scherger Law. This tool, updated every 5 years, would ensure HUBZone firms have the latest information on HUBZone eligible areas. This bill also ensures that the SBA administrator removes redesignated areas that are no longer qualified, which has been a problem in the past with many companies who've undergone the extensive certification process only to find the HubZone qualified area lost its designation. Another provision of the bill, including subsection 31D6, provides a firm who loses certification 30 days to submit documentation to the SBA to reestablish eligibility. Since the certification process is time-consuming, this is a common-sense approach to the process. We believe it will incentivize HubZone participation. Firms that may be hesitant to become HubZone certified have clear recourse should they feel that their certification was unjustly revoked. I would note that the federal government has never met its goal of contracting 3% of its contracts to HubZone companies. I would urge the committee to keep up its oversight of federal agencies and encourage them to contract with HubZone firms. It is certainly important to Clinton County, Ohio, and many other areas in this country. Adoption of this legislation is critical to the success of the program, and time is of the essence. We really need action this year to ensure that firms like mine can continue to work in the program. In closing, I want to emphasize that the HubZone program is an important economic development program. Incentivizing companies to locate in depressed areas is a good policy approach. However, changes must be made to the program, such as those in H.R. 3294. Thank you for the attention you have brought to this critical issue and for all of your work supporting our nation's small business and those in Ohio. I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. DeFore, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Shabbat, Ranking Member Velasquez, and members of the committee. My name is Dennis Dufour, and I'm the president of the data entry company TDEC. I appreciate this opportunity. TDEC was started in 1958 by my grandfather, who was an insurance agent. He sold a group hospitalization policy to the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association and needed a way to process applications. So we started TDEC to open mail, enter applicant data onto punch cards, and deposit checks. Shortly thereafter, my dad went to work for TDEC, adding customers like the National Geographic Society, Citibank credit cards, and the Republican National Committee. A stressful time was had when the FBI decided to investigate a break-in the Watergate and wanted to see the data we had collected. That investigation ultimately ended in the resignation of Richard Nixon. Today, 59 years later, my brother and I run TDEC, focusing on similar services as the founding, including data entry. We have 300 employees and don't take lightly the fact that we run a third-generation business, which statistically only survived 12% of the time. In March of 2002, I applied for HubZone certification. The program analyst assigned to our application was Mariana Pardo, who I note is now the director of the Hubzone program. After a thorough examination of our application, we were welcomed into the program shortly thereafter. We began to market this valuable certification to the federal government and to large prime contractors. 5 years later, we won our first prime contract with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, providing administrative support services to the Northwest and Alaska Fisheries Science Center. We were re-awarded this contract in 2012. We continue to serve for this valuable customer today. For 15 years, we have continuously maintained our HubZone certification through examinations, recertifications, and even a protest. We're proud to report that 47% of our employees live in HubZones, which is significantly higher than the 35% requirement of the program. We achieve this because we continually seek to hire, attract, and retain employees in underserved, economically distressed areas. In 2018, 4 months from now, Garrett County, where my and 11 other businesses are located, will no longer be a HubZone. I was wondering if this was an isolated event. So my team and I researched and found that there are 15 other counties similar to Garrett that will lose their HubZone certification in January. We also found another 71 counties will lose their certification in July of 2018. So knowing that I wasn't alone, I started a campaign to reach out to HubZones. I called this Save Our HubZone. And I asked a very simple question to other HubZone firms like TDEC. How will losing your HubZone status affect your business? I received many replies. Here are a few. From Detroit, Hubzone communities need Hubzone companies. No one better understands the community than those who are in it. Take away the lifeline of the community, and the community itself will wither. Atlanta, I'm looking to hire students that come from a community that needs assistance, public assistance. We are providing jobs because of our Hubzone certification. Hamilton County, Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio. Hubzone firms are vital to creating jobs and employment opportunities for the citizens who reside in Hubzones, most of whom are not highly skilled, but are hardworking, dedicated, and want to learn. So my message is simple. We need stability. Stability will be achieved by freezing the Hubzone map until 2020 and then adjusting it every 5 years thereafter. Remember, it took us 5 years to get our first prime contract. In the coming weeks, we need to decide whether we stay in our current location in Garrett County or move. If we move, many people will lose their jobs, coupled with the fact that we've been in Garrett County for over 50 years. Frankly, it's difficult, costly, and a distraction to move a business. So I ask you to act immediately on HR 3294 and give Hubzone communities stability. It's the most important economic issue facing rural America today. Again, I appreciate this opportunity, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Melendez, you recognize for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. Chairman Chabot, Ranking Member Velasquez, members of the House Small Business Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today as the committee examines the effectiveness of Hubzone reform. My name is Carlos Melendez, and I am the co-founder and chief operating officer of Wovenware, an 8A and Hubzone certified business located in San Juan, Puerto Rico. As you all know, Puerto Rico was seriously affected by Hurricane Irma 1 week ago today. Most of the island has been without power and water at different points. But as you can attest from my presence here today, we're resilient and do not let this type of setback stand in our way of achieving economic development for our U.S. territory. Since 2003, my company Wovenware has been developing custom software solutions for enterprises in industries such as telecommunications, healthcare, and distribution. It took us 3 months to organize and fill the application for the Hubzone program and 3 additional months to get certified. We are grateful for the help provided by our local PTAC, the Puerto Rico Federal Contracting Center, before and during the process. Here at Wovenware, we have recently been highly focused on developing smart and predictive software solutions that use artificial intelligence, predominantly deep learning, to help companies derive greater insights from their data and automate key functions. This deep expertise has allowed Wovenware to enter the federal market and conduct AI-related projects for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Today, Wovenware employs more than 90 people, most of whom are software engineers, computer, and data scientists. Despite the fact that Wovenware has been part of the Inc. 5000 list of the fastest growing U.S. companies for 3 years, and that 60% of our revenue comes from customers outside our physical island boundaries, it is only recently that we were given the opportunity to work with the federal government as a subcontractor on a Digital Globe NGA contract. We need more out-of-the-box thinkers like Digital Globe's executives Rob Torres and Tony Frazier, who gave us the opportunity to win this federal contract. Lead with quality, not certification, was the recommendations Mr. Rob N. Wong, Associate Administrator of the SBA, gave companies like ours during a previous hearing of this committee. A fair recommendation, but one, in my opinion, that underestimates the difficulty of getting your first federal contract, despite years of high-quality, referenceable private business experience, especially in an economically depressed area like Puerto Rico. It has taken Wovenware almost 4 years and significant investments to get our first federal contract. I hope the proposed new performance metrics outlined in the Hobbs Act put a spotlight on this problem and help SBA develop initiatives to stimulate the opportunities that originally inspired hope for Hubzone companies. While we are pleased to have received Hubzone certification late last year, there is much more that can be done to ensure that it accomplishes its original goal, to give small businesses in underserved areas a chance to succeed. It is our hope that a reformed Hubzone program lowers the barrier of entry for federal contracts for companies like ours. While currently 1/3 of federal contracts are filled right here in Washington, D.C., and the remainder elsewhere in the U.S. states, Wovenware's success serves to prove that there is enormous untapped potential for making Puerto Rico and other Hubzone areas the next frontier for outsourced federal projects. 3 key amendments on the Hubzone Reform Bill have the potential to generate this environment. These amendments are the new performance metrics, new 5-year time model, and grace period. The new performance metrics will highlight the use and not use of the program by federal agencies and how effective or ineffective the program is in helping businesses sell to the federal government. The 5-year time model that will allow the SBA to recalculate Hubzone areas in 5-year increments, and the grace period for firms dropping below the 35% threshold for employees from a Hubzone will provide federal agencies certainty into the number of Hubzone companies available for their contracting opportunities. It is my hope that this certainty will translate into additional Hubzone-only opportunities and will thus increase the use of the Hubzone program to the point where the 3% contracting mandate be achieved. Revising the provisions of the Hubzone program so that it remains true to its original intentions to jumpstart opportunities for small businesses to succeed would empower small businesses not only in Puerto Rico but across the country with a path to revitalized growth. The spirit of innovation, entrepreneurship, and inspiration, combined with the steadfast perseverance that Hurricane Irma proved so well, is alive and well in Puerto Rico. A rainbow-rated Hubzone program will be just the right spark, not only for Puerto Rico, but for small businesses everywhere, to ignite hope, confidence, and ultimately growth that will stimulate healthy economies across the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'll now recognize myself to begin the questioning for 5 minutes. Mr. Dufour, I think I'm going to start with you. I had, quite frankly, kind of a boring technical question I was going to ask you. Then you talked about Nixon and Watergate. Tell us about that. How was your company involved in that? And that's got to be interesting.
So the Republican National Committee, back in the day when they solicited donations, they would solicit donations checks and basically a remittance slip. And our firm would enter the donation information, name, address, other information that needed to be filed with the Federal Election Commission, and deposit the check for the RNC. And so one summer, we were on vacation, and my dad got a call from the office. And the office said, Mr. Dufour, he's here today, the FBI's in the lobby, and they want to see the data that we've collected for the RNC. And he said, I'll be right there. Well, it was an 8-hour drive. And he got right there, and he said to the FBI, well, this is not public information. I don't think I can share this with you. And they retorted, then we're going to shut down your business. And he said, here's the data. So ultimately, that did lead to extend the investigation and, unfortunately, the resignation of our sitting president.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Now I'll get to my boring questions and things of that nature. Ms. Bailey, I'm gonna start out with the boring questions with you. You've highlighted that this bill may extend the number of rural area qualified for Hubzone designation. Could you describe some of the challenges that your firm and other rural firms encounter that may differ from those located in urban areas, and how will this legislation help to alleviate those issues?
Okay, definitely. Many of the rural areas, one of the major issues that they have is, one, they don't have the population density. People tend to be spread out. They're not around a central major industry such as the federal government. They tend to be further around 50, further past 50 miles from those distance, so you have larger commute type things. They don't have the access to the infrastructure in a lot of the cases. You don't have strong connections with broadband, those types of areas where we need the encouragement of additional companies coming into these areas to make it feasible and more cost-effective for agencies to come in and put the infrastructure in place. So you're looking at these types of areas where you're dependent upon these companies, and the Hubzone program, if we can get companies to relocate and help with the economic development of these rural areas, then we're going to be able to add the infrastructure and the training and the capacity for these employees and have other opportunities that may be in the areas that these individuals are actually locating. A lot of rural areas are not interested in relocating to the cities for employment. They have to travel long distances to do that, and although I'm not saying that they don't, because a lot of them do it out of necessity, but from a family standpoint and from them being able to keep their unit together and for us to be able to encourage our children to stay in their hometowns, to go to college, come back to their hometowns and invest in their hometowns, the Hubzone program is a great way to do that and to help with the economic development in these areas.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sugar, one of the reasons the federal government hasn't met its 3% HubZone small business goal is because there is some belief, I think, among some that among the agencies that the HubZone small businesses are limited to a certain type of work, like janitorial services, for example. Could you talk about your experiences kind of overcoming such obstacles, and do you have any suggestions as to how to reverse that type of thinking?
Yes, thank you for the question. In our situation, it was a unique opportunity because we do a lot of inbound, outbound call center work, collections work, and we were able to team up with Franklin County and their ResCare operation, and actually they helped us recruit potential employees for the firm that we would then bring in, train, and then a number of them will become full-time employees for the law firm. So I think the goal is to, with this bill, allowing other types of companies to pursue HubZone opportunities by increasing the geographic region of that. It will in essence help more different types of companies to go after the HubZone status.
Thank you very much. I apologize, Mr. Melendez, I've run out of time, so I now recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Melendez, the federal government has yet to meet the 3% prime contracting goal or the 3% subcontracting goal for the HubZone program. Furthermore, only 25% of dollars awarded to HubZone firms come from a HubZone contract. So what do you recommend Congress to do to spur agency use of the sole source and set aside authority given to them through the HubZone program?
Yes. My first recommendation is I think the performance metrics will help a lot to shine a spotlight on that problem. I think first of all, it's going to be a data problem, getting the information out there. Then it's going to be how the SBA and Congress can help show that information in a useful way that tells the story of how HubZones are really not being in use. That should pressure agencies to take a hard look into what they're doing and think outside the box and just bring more opportunities for sole source and HubZone only contracts, because they'll see that there are companies that can actually provide those services.
Thank you. Ms. Bailey, as we discussed before, program participation dropped immensely following the release of the 2010 census data. And the program now also incorporates the ACS data that updates every year, causing more uncertainty. Furthermore, nearly 90% of HubZones do not have a single certified firm. How will the proposed 5-year cycle impact HubZone program participation from a business owner perspective?
Definitely, it's going to give us more certainty, because knowing that you have 5 years and the requirement to have the available data there will give the business owner the opportunity to be able to assess areas that if he has to move, where he could go to and have more information. It's going to allow companies to consider when they're coming into the HubZone program, how much time they have. And also, in addition, is even if they do come within that 5-year period and the area does get redesignated, they still have the 3 years, which will give them them that period of time to make these decisions. The 5-year is going to provide people who are entering into long-term leases. A lot of our leases are 5-year terms, contracts are 5-year terms, so that will give us the ability to make those decisions on doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Sugar, would you like to comment on the same question?
I would, yes, echo Shirley's sentiments that the 5-year, someone like myself, it's a critical part because you invest in infrastructure, you invest in job training, you create jobs in areas that jobs need to be created, and then in 6 months later, or a year later, as is current, the rug gets pulled out from under you. So I believe strongly in this bill that 5-year window will then allow more companies to pursue the hub zone status to create those jobs, knowing that there is a stability within the program.
Thank you. And Mr. Sugar, I would like for you to comment on the following question. SBA does not currently send individual notices to businesses to notify them of changes affecting their hub zone eligibility. SBA has stated that it is a business owner duty to keep up to date. How realistic is it for small firms to be aware of every change potentially affecting their status?
I think it's very tough, particularly when, obviously it's our responsibility as companies to try to stay up to date, but it's also the SBA's responsibility to make sure that timely information is produced in order to stay up to date. And not when you check, something changes after you've checked, and then all of a sudden they say it's your responsibility. That's what, those are the types of issues that makes the program tough, and probably allows people to believe that it's not worth them participating in.
Mr. Dufour, will you?
Well, better turn that on. It's incumbent upon the small business to stay on top of regulation. It would be an added benefit if it was more proactively coming from the SBA, yes.
We're going to make it more proactively, but
Brilliant.
yeah. So my question is, does the legislative requirement that the SBA refreshes the hub zone map every 5 years and any time that there is a base closure and qualified disaster help fix this notification problem?
And generally, each time's expired, but you can answer the question, whoever.
Mr. Sugar,
Mr. Sugar.
Yes, absolutely.
thank you. Thank you.
Very much. Generally, each time's expired. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Lukemeyer, who's Vice Chairman of this committee, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd be remiss if I wouldn't mention my predecessor of my being here in Congress is here this morning, and I want to mention Kenny Holtzoff is in the audience, and he left some really big shoes to fill, and the only way I'm coming close is I do have big feet, so welcome, Kenny. Thank you all for being here this morning. It's an interesting conversation we're having on the hub zones here, and my first question, obviously, we've got 19,000 census tracts, 828 counties, 108 base closure measures, 593 qualified Indian lands covered by hub zones, and only 6,000 certified small businesses. Why are we having difficulty getting businesses in the program, I guess, is the first question.
Can I take part of that?
Yeah, fire away.
One of the major problems is the lack of hub zone set-asides. When we have the contracting vehicles there, it's going to encourage more firms to participate in the program. So, over the years, we're not making anywhere near, we're actually going down in the meeting the 3% goal. And you find that when we start to meet that 3% goal, more and more firms will enter the program. They don't see that this investment in this program is going to pay off if there's no set-aside programs.
Okay, so do you see the program actually enticing businesses into the zone, or are you just picking up businesses that are already in the zone itself?
No, I think it's enticing businesses into the zones.
Do you have some numbers on that?
No, I don't have anything particular, but we can use us for an example. The reason that we're in Garrett County is because it was a hub zone. We are actually out of Frederick County to begin with. We moved to Allegheny, it lost its designation, and when we were looking to move to another hub zone, that was one of the major factors we were looking at. And Garrett County is why we moved to Garrett County. Go ahead.
Because of in my mind, what would look like a pretty small number of businesses that are actually qualified for hub zone, is there enough competition for contracts that way so that we actually have a good competitive bid from somebody in that zone? Or is it single source, and maybe we're overpaying for services?
Well, at one point, there was over 13,000 Hubzone firms until the census came, and a lot of them were removed from the program because of the changes in the census data. And we believe that at that point in time, there was definitely 2 or more in every NAICS code. Right now, we have roughly 6,000 firms, which is pretty equivalent to some of the other set-aside programs as well. So, I think that by encouraging more contracting, Hubzone contracting, we can encourage more firms to get in there, yes.
Okay, let's take that another step farther. So if you wind up with more businesses coming into the hub zone, is that going to hurt existing businesses in our hub zone with more competition?
Well, competition's good. So, it'll encourage more hub zones to be competing in different areas, more diverse markets. We believe that we can open up the number of markets, areas that the hub zones are participating in. One of the fallacies right now is that still a lot of people believe it's more in construction and janitorial, those types of things. But our largest business sector that's growing is the IT services. So,
well, the reason for my first question with regards to the lack of competition, if our contracts are, vectored with those folks, there's not enough competition, then competition will drive those prices down and be impactful.
well, I still think that even with the 6,000 firms and the number of Hubzone set-asides that we still have a considerable amount of competition throughout the Hubzone program at
Very
this
good.
point.
In the bill, it extends the time period for which a qualified disaster area is considered as such, and proposes to modify the definition of base closure area by aligning it with the definitions of qualified census tract and qualified metropolitan area. Are there other areas that we could designate similar to a disaster area or base closure areas that we could add to this list that you're aware of? I guess my question is are we complete with the way we're designating this? Are there other problem areas that we could see that could help by expanding a definition of a hub zone that would be helpful?
At this point, I don't have any answer to that at this point. I haven't thought
Rest
about
of the
that.
panel got any ideas, questions? Are we spot on with what we're doing here?
I think you're spot on. I think that 3294 really clarifies the BRAC. It clarifies the disaster location, and it incentivizes companies to go into those locations. So I think you nailed it.
Okay, perfect. My time's expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Evans, is the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Economic Growth, Tax, and Capital Access. Recognized 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bailey, how important is the certainty that H.R. 3294 attempts to legislate to the type of businesses which your council is composed of?
As far as from the certainty standpoint, it's from the investment. These Hubzone firms are going in, they're investing in buildings that have been, that need renovation. They're going in and investing their financial assets in hiring and training Hubzone employees. One of the additional costs that is when you hire a lot of the Hubzone employees don't have the required skill sets. So this encourages these firms to go in and develop training programs to hire individuals in those areas and provide them with the skill sets. But you're investing in long-term leases. You're helping the economic development of those areas by by renovating buildings. We actually bought a building from the county and renovated that building. And so those investments, you need that amount of time in order to start to recover that and to be able to get your business off the ground.
Can you give a specific example of types of businesses?
We're actually a professional services business, IT businesses. We went into Garrett County, where right now there was only one other Hubzone firm at the time we went in there. We now have 11 businesses. There are several different variety. We have some IT businesses. We have professional services businesses. Higher skill level businesses are coming into the area as a result of the Hubzone program.
Mr. Melendez, I read your testimony and share your frustration at the challenges in getting federal contracts. I have no question, but simply applaud your patience and your resolve in making it here under extremely trying circumstances. So just talk a little bit about this is your chance to, if you had to say something to us specifically, ways that we can really assist you.
Yeah, for us, it's been a long journey. Like I said at the testimony, it's been 4 years, almost 4 years in the making of us trying continuously, coming here to DC, establishing contracts. Like I said in my testimony, I think a third of the contracts are here in the DC area, and I will tell you that probably 85 or 90% of them have to start, or at least at some point start here. So it does take considerable time, investment for companies like ours to come here, establish those contacts, make sure that our private experience is taken into consideration when a contracting officer is gambling with an opportunity for us. Like I said in my statement, we can have 10 years of private experience, but for the contracting officer, I have nothing. So getting that message out there are companies like ours, that they're Hubzone companies that have serious and good experience, and letting them know that it's really not a gamble. It's just kind of the wedge into starting your federal contract practice. I think that help would be greatly appreciated.
I thank you, too, for all you've tried to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Thank you. The gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Comer, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me begin by saying the Hubzone program is very important to small business and economic development in my congressional district in Kentucky. I have 13 of my 35 counties, as you mentioned. One of the challenges that we have in rural America is trying to sustain our best and brightest people in those areas, and I think this is part of the solution. Hub zones, economic freedom zones, we have to incentivize businesses to want to stay or want to relocate into the rural area. So and my first question is to Ms. Bailey. In your testimony, you described the impact that H.R. 3294 might have on rural small businesses. From the perspective of the Hubzone Council, can you tell us how H.R. 3294 might benefit those firms that are located in urban areas?
Definitely. The one major impact for those in the urban areas is going to be the freezing of the maps. Mm-hmm. That will enable them in those areas to be able to have more certainty, because the urban areas, the numbers probably change quicker. You know, the map probably changes, quicker than the rural areas do. But it's a census area consideration. And I think that by freezing that for 5 years will give a lot more certainty to those firms as well, and be able to encourage more firms to move into those areas as well.
One of the complaints I would hear when I was a member of the Kentucky General Assembly from the legislators representing the urban areas is that they're subsidizing the rural areas with the fact that the rural areas don't have an adequate tax base. And I think that it's important to note that this can help urban areas in many ways, and that being one way. So I appreciate that. I also have to highlight a Hubzone contractor in my district, Geo Consultants in Keville, Kentucky, which is in Ballard County. They specialize in environmental and disaster cleanups. They're going to be very busy in the coming weeks and months to take care of trying to fix those areas in the aftermath of the hurricanes. But this is a program I strongly support. I appreciate your all's testimony here today, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Norman, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all for taking your time to come testify. I guess this is for any of you. I'm a developer. Been in private business for a lot longer than I've been in politics. Fraud and abuse, inflated contracts. Mr. Lukemeyer mentioned competitive bids. Does this bill have safeguards that prevents fraud and abuse and the system from being abused, in your opinion?
Well, I think that the inclusion of putting in some performance metrics and some a little bit more information will provide that assurance against fraud and abuse also. And not only that, from the Hubzone Council perspective, we do a lot of our own policing as well. to make sure through the education and the training and the constant reassurance that we have with even our members and outside, that we help police in those areas to ensure that the fraud and abuse doesn't come into this program. So I think that by including more stringent performance metrics and information reporting, I think that we can control that throughout the industry.
Give me an example of a metric that you think would have teeth.
I think that one metric that might have teeth is a reporting of, let's just say, as new contract awards, come up, is stronger program exams from the SBA's perspective to ensure that they're checking those who are winning these contracts. The recertification program, re-strengthening the recertification of the SBA to ensure that firms are compliant and continuing to be compliant. And I think that those are the major ways to help to ensure that we're continuing to reduce the fraud, waste, and abuse in the program.
Anybody else?
Yes, I think one of the key areas of this bill, focuses on, the payroll snapshot for the business, because at any point in time, the Hubzone or the SBA can come in and request your existing payroll, which then, if you're not following or even close to the guidelines of the Hubzone program, then you'd be, violating the program and kicked out. So I think that strengthening that ability will definitely help alleviate any of the, help alleviate some of the fraud and abuse you talk about.
Has that happened? The checks and balances that you talk about?
I think that's part of what the bill is beginning to empower the SBA to do now.
Okay.
Is to allow them to begin to do that more aggressively, whereas before I think there was more lackadaisical oversight of that. Hence the opportunity now to strengthen it.
Let me just add that the federal acquisition regulations also has a provision to protest. So in a Hubzone set-aside procurement, if an award goes to a Hubzone firm and another Hubzone firm says, I don't think they're a Hubzone, there's a process that's followed. It escalates to the SBA, and it's incumbent upon the SBA to basically do a complete examination. They're going to ask you if the business is still in a Hubzone, and they'll verify it. They're going to want to see that you have 35% of your employees living in a Hubzone, and they'll verify it. And then finally, they're going to want to know that the ownership is 51% U.S. citizen, and they verify that. I've been through that protest process. It works. I've also been on the opposite, where I have protested, and the award was retracted from a firm that was actually not a Hubzone. So I think there are good checks and balances, not just in this bill, but in the FAR.
I would add that reporting that includes comparative analysis between the other SBA programs and the whole federal contracting as a whole will actually help to provide those check and balances and give a spotlight to those possible fraud and abuse cases, particularly.
Well, y'all are in the trenches, and as we move forward, as you see things that can be added, whether it gets amendments in this bill or not, it would be great to let your thoughts be known and improving this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back. Ms. Adams, would you want to go now, or you want to you'll come back to you after one, or? I don't know, your feet are on the ground. You good? Okay, the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Adams, who's the ranking member of Subcommittee on Investigations, Oversight, and Regulations, recognized 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Had a major overlap this morning. And I want to thank all of the witnesses for being here today and taking the time to share. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Is that Schruger?
Yes.
Okay, all right. In your testimony, you stated that the Hubzone certification process was at times challenging due to long wait periods, analyst changes, and an understaffed Hubzone office. Through your recertification experience, have you found these problems to be rectified? And if you haven't, how can we ensure that the process is efficient and impervious to fraud?
Yeah, and Thank you for the question. I believe in my circumstance was unique in being a law firm, because what took place was in being a law firm, there's lawyers in my law firm that are agents for other companies. So what happened during my certification process is that there was an assumption that, we had 20 companies under our ownership, when that was not the case. But we, as a law firm, you exist as an agent for other entities. So clarifying that confusion with the Hubzone analyst, what happened was we got handed off to another Hubzone analyst to then re-explain, and so the lack of consistency with the analyst that you have, and then the lack of an ability to request the same analyst when you resubmit the information. When it goes to a new analyst, it's a whole, the process starts all over again. So in my specific example, I think it's been rectified from when I first applied back, and then got certified in 2016 to where it is now. Is through the council, we've been able to raise some of those issues with the current Hubzone director, and I think Ms. Pardo has taken a look, and I think hence the strengthening of here in this current House bill that's being presented, I think will help that.
Okay. Mr. Melendez, in your experience, do small businesses incur some additional costs when they're located in and employ workers who reside in economically distressed areas, such as costs to recruit and train workers?
I think there are costs associated to that. I think there will be other costs if you were in a highly populated or highly competitive urban area. So I think those actually in the long run will balance themselves out. There are definitely a lot of different challenges for being in an underdeveloped and rural area, like you clearly explained. Hiring takes a lot more time. So actually, the grace period and being able to at least try to add a little bit more time to that would be greatly beneficial to the bill, I think. But apart from that and the training, I think, like I say, it will balance. It does balance a little bit out.
Okay, thank you. SBA is still in the process of streamlining certifications through certify.sba.gov and perfecting this process. How can Congress ensure that the Hubzone process changes for the better once it's incorporated into this new website? And that's a question for anyone who'd like to answer it.
Well, I think one of the major things is integrating the application process, the maps, and the recertification process all into this certified.gov, and to be able to incorporate the requirement for performance metrics. On behalf of the Hubzone, I can tell you that most of the Hubzone firms would be happy to provide data if there was an easy way to do that. And if they could incorporate that within the system where we could go in and provide periodic information, this would be a greatly desirable improvement in the overall Hubzone program.
Okay. Does anyone else want a quick answer? Or am I? No one? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And Mr. Chair, I'll yield back.
Thank you very much. Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Fitzpatrick, is recognized 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for giving us your time today. I think it's safe to say that in a nation with $20.1 trillion in debt, that growing our economy is far and away the most significant challenge facing this Congress and this country. I have no doubt that programs like this help in that regard, infusing cash into economically distressed areas. My question is regarding this statute in particular. Clearly, in addition to federal incentives, you have state enterprise zones, you have county economic opportunity zones, you also have municipal incentives. In your experience in the implementation of these programs, how seamless is the integration in these various programs to hitting the target, the intended target of making sure that we maximize employment opportunities for people in these areas?
It's not really a seamless process. The municipality and the county and the state each have their own organizations and entities by which they answer up to, and then to try to integrate that into the Hubzone program. One of the things that we have had success with has been working like in Clinton County with the Wilmington Port Authority with the airport. They've been very supportive locally in giving us incentives on top of the hub zone status in order to employ there in that economic distressed area. So that's an example of what you talked about, sort of a seamless working relationship between the local entities, not exactly hand in hand, but all of those enticements help in creating the jobs in the economically distressed area.
So when you say it's not seamless, are we essentially dealing with a patchwork of programs that are affecting different types of people, different entities, different zones in the community?
I would say yes. Through my experience, that would be correct.
Is there anything in this legislation on a federal level we can do to increase that integration? Because I would think that if we designate a certain area, that's an area in need, then why not pull together all the resources? Because these are all taxpayer dollars, just on different levels, hitting the intended target in unison to expand economic growth.
I think that's a great idea. And not only that, is that also what we need to be doing is through the education and the encouragement of these areas, that this is one of the toolkits for them to use for their economic development and the workforce training. Now, we do see that in a lot of the rural areas, and SBA has been working on trying to put a toolkit together that they took around on their their hub zone destination tours to each one of these areas. So I think that we see that happening. We see that those areas that are in need, they are trying to work together, and it is a consolidated team as part of their economic development. But it is an important thing through the hub zone, through the Hubzone program, to encourage that you are working with the economic development groups, you are working with the educational groups, you are working with your workforce development groups to make this program successful.
So is that an amendment you think would be a good idea for this statute?
Oh, I think it would be a great idea if we could figure out a way to do that, yes.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back, and I will now recognize myself for just a couple of minutes to kind of wrap up here. Two questions. First for you, Mr. Melendez, since I didn't get around to you the first time. Obviously, Puerto Rico and some of our southern states, Florida in particular, Georgia to some extent, Louisiana, and especially Texas have been hit with major hurricanes of late. Could you tell us, as a practical matter, my understanding is Puerto Rico, most of it, although not all of it, I think, is a hub zone. What positive or practical impact of being a hub zone should it have in the rebuilding effort down in Puerto Rico, for example?
I think it's a great opportunity. I think a lot of the relief work, a lot of the reconstruction of these areas, I think hub zone companies as a whole should be used and should be given priority for this. It will definitely help the underlying communities, because I believe a lot of, at least in the case of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, it will not only impact the work on the destruction that happened, but those were already economically depressed areas. So having companies from the same hub zone areas being able to do the work to reinvigorate and to reconstruct the destructed area, I think will have a great impact. So if there's some way that the reconstruction contracts can be given some kind of hub zone or at least priority to hub zone companies, it will definitely help.
Thank you very much. And my final question, Ms. Bailey, is kind of a follow-up to Mr. Norman's question. He was, and I think appropriately so, talking about making sure that we have as little as possible fraud and abuse in the program. We're the government. Let's face it, we're never going to eliminate this kind of stuff as much as we want to try, but we need to reduce it as much as possible and hopefully eliminate it. And it's my understanding that in this legislation and in the original legislation, there are some safeguards in that, some additional things like reporting requirements and things that the SBA should be able to oversee. So on the one hand, we want to do those things. On the other hand, the SBA sort of has a reputation of being a very paperwork-intensive organization that can make it difficult for people to take advantage of the loan programs that are available out there. So there needs to be a balance between making sure that we're eliminating that fraud and abuse, and at the same time that we're not just hitting people over the head with paperwork all the time. So would you want to maybe just touch on that balance and let me know what you think about what I just said.
Yeah, I think that the balance is definitely required. But I think that by looking at this and automating a lot of these types of requirements where it doesn't take a considerable amount of time for us to go in as we're doing our recertification to fill in key data points and performance metric information, and that SBA then begins accumulating and using that information and targeting high-risk type of areas, so that if you have contractors and you're measuring awards that are coming out and you evaluate those contractors as these awards are happening, then you can start mitigating any fraud, waste, and abuse at the point in time that this is actually occurring. So by having us report, maybe as part of the system, the performance metrics here is if you are, proposing on Hubzone set-asides, or you're awarded a Hubzone set-aside, a requirement to report that automatically, electronically, not by paper and all of that, in a mechanism where they can measure the risk in assessment of these awards.
Thank you very much. And in closing, I would just note that I think our panel here has been very helpful, and all the committee's members understanding the Hubzone program better and realizing that it can be an effective program in combating poverty and increasing economic independence and job creation. And although we'll continue to monitor it and try to make improvements where we can in a bipartisan manner. And I want to again thank Ms. Velasquez for her hard work and staffs on both sides for this. I would ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statements and supporting materials for the record. Without objection, so ordered. And if there's no further business to come before the committee, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.